I still remember the exact moment everyone in the room decided my future for me. It started with laughter. The kind of laughter people try to hide behind coffee cups and fake smiles. "You've been single forever," my cousin Jake joked. "We finally found the perfect woman for you." Someone else added, "She's sweet. But, well, she's a little on the bigger side." A little. The way they whispered those words made it sound like they were apologizing before introducing me to a criminal. Then one of my friends leaned closer and said quietly, "Just give her one date. She probably doesn't get asked out much." That sentence hit me harder than anyone realized. Not because of what it said about her. Because of what it revealed about them. Somehow, kindness had become pity. Respect had become charity. And a woman's worth had been reduced to the number on a clothing tag. I hadn't even met her yet. But I already knew one thing. If I showed up to that date thinking I was doing her a favor, I didn't deserve to be there. The following Saturday, I arrived 15 minutes early at a small cafe outside Nashville. I kept wondering what she was thinking. Had she been told the same thing? Were her friends convincing her to give the lonely guy a chance? When she walked through the door, she looked around nervously until our eyes met. She smiled. Not because she was confident. Because she was trying very hard to hide how terrified she felt. I stood and introduced myself. "Emily." She nodded. "You must be Daniel." There was an awkward silence before she laughed. I should probably say this now. I tilted my head. "My sister signed me up." I burst out laughing. "My cousin signed me up." For the first time that evening, neither of us felt like strangers. As dinner went on, I learned Emily was an elementary school art teacher. She loved painting sunsets. She volunteered every Sunday at an animal shelter. She remembered the names of every waiter we spoke to. When an elderly man accidentally dropped his cane near our table, Emily was out of her seat before anyone else noticed. She helped him pick up his belongings, asked if he needed water, and waited until he was comfortable before sitting back down. She didn't do it for attention. In fact, she looked embarrassed when the restaurant applauded. That was the moment I stopped noticing anything except her heart. When the check arrived, she reached for it first. "I'd like to split it." "You don't have to." "I know." She smiled. "But I want to." That simple sentence told me everything. She wasn't looking for someone to rescue her. She wanted a partner. Outside the restaurant, she looked at me carefully. "You don't have to pretend." "Pretend what?" "That you had a good time." I frowned. People usually try to let me down gently. My chest tightened. "What makes you think that's what's happening?" She shrugged. "I'm used to being someone's joke." I couldn't answer immediately because I realized she wasn't exaggerating. She had lived through enough rejection that disappointment had become familiar. So instead of giving a speech, I asked the only question that mattered. "Would you like to have dinner again next Friday?" Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious." For months, we kept dating. She introduced me to hiking trails I never knew existed. I taught her how to grill the perfect steak. She laughed at my terrible dancing. I admired the way she could make every child feel important. Life became lighter. Not because everything was perfect. Because she made ordinary moments unforgettable. Then came Thanksgiving. Both our families met for the first time. Everything was going well until one of my uncles, after too many drinks, leaned across the table. "So, Daniel." I knew that tone. "You could have dated anybody." He glanced toward Emily. "What made you settle?" The room became silent. Emily looked down at her plate. She'd heard versions of that question her entire life. I stood up. Not because I was angry. Because some moments deserve witnesses. I didn't settle. Everyone stared. I got lucky. No one spoke. I continued. You all looked at her and saw a size. I looked at her and saw the woman who spends Saturdays buying school supplies for children whose parents can't afford them. The woman who stayed all night with a neighbor she'd barely met after surgery. The woman who remembers birthdays, forgives quickly, volunteers constantly, and somehow makes every room feel safer. I looked directly at my uncle. If you think that's settling, I smiled. Then I hope everyone here settles exactly the way I did. Emily quietly wiped away tears. So did my mother. Even my uncle looked ashamed. But life wasn't finished teaching us lessons. A few months later, Emily was driving home from work when she witnessed a terrible highway accident. Most drivers slowed down. Some recorded videos. Emily pulled over. She crawled through broken glass to comfort a frightened little girl trapped inside a damaged vehicle until firefighters arrived. She stayed with her for nearly 40 minutes, telling stories, singing songs, and holding her tiny hand. The child survived. The girl's parents later found Emily. They hugged her for several minutes without saying a word. That story spread throughout our town. People called her a hero. Emily hated that word. I just did what anyone should do. But I knew better. Not everyone would have. Kindness isn't automatic. It's a choice. Every single day. A year later, I proposed in the same cafe where we first met. I didn't hire photographers. I didn't organize flash mobs. I simply looked across the table and said, "You've spent your whole life making other people feel chosen." She smiled through tears. "I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never question whether you are." She didn't answer with words. She just nodded before hugging me so tightly I thought my ribs might break. Our wedding wasn't expensive. The decorations were handmade by her students. The flowers came from neighbors. The music was performed by friends. Nearly everyone cried. Not because it was glamorous. Because it felt real. During the reception, Jake, the cousin who had introduced us, asked to make a toast. He looked at Emily before turning toward me. "I owe both of you an apology." The room grew quiet. "When I fixed you two up." He swallowed hard. I honestly thought Daniel would be doing Emily a favor. Emily reached for my hand. Jake shook his head. "I've never been so wrong." He smiled through tears. "Watching you two changed the way I see people. I used to judge confidence by appearance. I used to mistake beauty for perfection. Now I know the most beautiful people are usually the ones quietly carrying everyone else." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Years passed. We had 2 children. Emily taught them that everyone deserves kindness before judgment. She taught them to wave at lonely neighbors, to leave bigger tips when they could, to include the kid eating lunch alone, to look people in the eyes, to say thank you like they meant it. One afternoon, our daughter came home from middle school upset. A boy said my friend Ava is too fat to ever find someone who loves her. Emily knelt beside her. "What did you tell him?" I said my mom is beautiful. Emily hugged her. "And?" I told him the problem isn't Ava's body. It's the way he looks at people. That night, after our daughter went to bed, Emily cried quietly on the back porch. "What's wrong?" I asked. She smiled. "I spent so many years believing nobody would ever choose me." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "I'm glad everyone else was wrong." She laughed softly. "So am I." Sometimes people ask how we met. They expect some romantic fairy tale. Instead, I tell them the truth. We were fixed up because people underestimated her. Then I smile. They thought they were introducing me to someone who needed a chance. I pause every time. They never realized I was the lucky one all along.